Hey there, sleepyheads. Welcome back to the channel. Before we drift into tonight's tale of the afterlife and adventure time, I'd love to know where in the world are you watching from tonight? And what time is it for you right now? Drop it in the comments below. It's always magical seeing how far and wide this sleepy little community reaches. All right, lights low, blankets up. Let's begin. When we think about the Land of Ooo, our minds usually drift first to its bright, colorful landscape, rolling candy kingdoms, enchanted forests, the icy spires of the Ice Kingdom, or the grassy hills where Finn and Jake make their home. But tucked just beyond the edges of that vibrant world, hidden in layers of shadow and mystery, there exists another realm, a place where the living seldom wander, and where the flow of time feels different, quieter, heavier. This is the dead world. The dead world is perhaps the most direct vision of the afterlife we see in Adventure Time. It is not hidden behind symbolism or vague suggestion. It is shown to us, with its muted colors and strange, eerie calm. When a soul passes from the living realm of Ooo, it often drifts here, finding itself under the watchful eye of Death himself. Now, Adventure Time has always had a gentle way of presenting even the most frightening ideas. And death, in this unit, is not treated as an enemy to be defeated, but as a natural turning of the page. The dead world reflects this. Though it is unsettling in its design, with shadowed halls and endless quiet, there is a strange sense of order to it. It does not feel chaotic or cruel. Instead, it feels like a waiting room outside eternity. At the heart of this realm sits Death, a tall, skeletal figure draped in dark robes, with a skull-like face and a voice that echoes like a hollow wind through the stillness. Death is not kind, but neither is he needlessly cruel. He is a gatekeeper, a judge of sorts, who watches over the endless procession of souls that arrive in his domain. When we meet him in the series, he exudes an aura of inevitability. There is no trickery in him, no deception, only finality. What makes Death in Adventure Time so fascinating is how ordinary he can feel despite his immense role. He has a house in the shadowy plane. He plays instruments. He argues with his son. It is as if even the ultimate force of mortality cannot escape the everyday quirks of personality. This is part of the genius of the show. It makes the incomprehensible feel strangely relatable, as though even Death himself has hobbies and family troubles, just like anyone else. But let's pause and imagine the journey of a soul into this world. Perhaps it belonged to a candy citizen who lived a simple life in the Candy Kingdom, or a fiery warrior from the Fire Kingdom, or even a traveler who wandered across the wastes of Ooo. The moment life leaves them, they do not vanish into nothingness. Instead, they drift, drawn gently into the quiet realm where death waits. For some, the journey might be confusing. For others, strangely calm. And when they arrive, they find themselves in a place that is not entirely terrifying, but undeniably foreign. A place that whispers of endings and transition. The dead world is not bright or colorful. Instead, it is muted. Its palette leans toward grays and shadows with just enough shape and structure to remind us of the world left behind. In some ways, it looks like a distorted reflection of Ooo itself, stripped of its warmth and life. Empty plains stretch out, marked by occasional rocky outcroppings or the faint outline of distant structures. The air feels still, as though holding its breath, and every sound seems to echo longer than it should. And then, there is the throne room, Death's domain within the dead world. Here the skeletal ruler sits, waiting for the next soul to cross his threshold. He does not rush them. He does not reach out with force. He simply waits, patient and unmoving, because he knows that all roads, sooner or later, lead to him. This is a chilling but strangely comforting thought. For in Ooo, as in our own imaginations, the end is not chaos, but a certainty embodied in the figure of Death. What is especially intriguing is how Adventure Time chooses to frame this moment of judgment. When Finn and Jake encounter Death, the interaction is not laden with terror or dread. Instead, it is strange, awkward, and almost mundane at times. Death does not seek to torment them. He negotiates, he bargains, and he expresses annoyance like any other character might. And yet behind that banter, there is always the reminder that he holds absolute power. If death wishes, he can claim a soul in an instant. If he chooses, he can return one. This balance of the ordinary and the absolute is what makes the dead world so memorable. The presence of death also hints at a larger system of order in Ooo's afterlife. For if there is a realm where souls gather and a being who watches over them, then perhaps death is not simply an end, but part of a larger cycle. The dead world, in this way, becomes more than just a spooky backdrop. It is a window into the metaphysical rules that govern Adventure Time. As we reflect on this, it becomes clear that the dead world is not a place of punishment, nor is it a paradise. It is not heaven, nor hell. It is closer to a crossing point, a neutral domain where every soul must pass before moving on, whether to rest, to reincarnate, or to something else entirely. It is this neutrality that makes it so striking. In many stories, the afterlife is divided into categories of reward and punishment. But in Adventure Time, the dead world is simply there, existing as part of the natural order, unchanging and unbothered by notions of good or evil. For Finn and Jake, entering this space is a disruption of the natural order, but for the souls who belong there, it is merely the next chapter. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson the dead world offers us, that death is not framed as horror, but as inevitability. It does not need to be feared, though it should be respected. To truly understand the dead world, we should linger on death himself a little longer. His appearance is unmistakable, a towering skeletal frame with the faint shape of horns cloaked in darkness. But the voice that issues from him is not a terrifying roar. Instead, it is deep, echoing, and almost weary, as though he has spoken the same truth for countless millennia. He does not need to be loud or dramatic, because his presence alone carries weight. When Finn and Jake meet him, their journey reveals just how surreal this figure is. Death is not some distant god hidden away in unreachable heights. He is approachable. He can be bargained with. He can even be tricked, as Finn once manages to do. This makes him feel strangely more real, more grounded, as though even the ultimate authority in Ooo is still bound by rules, contracts, and the possibility of loss. There is a moment when Death plays his bass guitar, plucking away in the quiet of his realm. This single image captures so much about how Adventure Time handles the concept of mortality. Death, the universal constant, spends his time not in endless judgment, but in music. It is such a profoundly human act, one of rhythm, repetition, and expression. By giving death this hobby, the show reminds us that even the scariest figures soften, and that even in the silence of endings, there can be art. But Death's realm is not without tension. His son, known simply as Death's son, adds another layer to this strange mythos. Unlike his father, the son craves control and power. He does not embody the calm inevitability of mortality, but rather the hunger to dominate it. This dynamic suggests that while Death himself is impartial, the forces around him are not always so stable. Even within the afterlife, personalities clash, ambitions rise, and balance must be maintained. For a moment, imagine wandering the dead world as one of its countless souls. You would find yourself surrounded not by fire or torment, but by vast emptiness. The silence would stretch out, broken only by the occasional groan of stone or the soft hum of wind. Other souls might drift nearby, some confused, some resigned, each of them caught in that in-between state. There is no rushing here, no hurry to reach the next step. The entire realm feels like a pause, the moment between an ending and whatever comes after. The throne room itself deepens this impression. In its dim light, the skull-faced figure of Death sits unmoving, and yet there is a strange patience in his gaze. He does not judge with emotion. He does not rage or celebrate. He simply is. His role is not to define what a soul deserves, but to ensure that the order of things continues unbroken. In that way, death is less a villain and more a cosmic anchor, the point around which the cycles of life and rebirth turn. This portrayal is so striking because it strips away the fear we usually associate with mortality. Instead of portraying death as a predator, Adventure Time shows him as a caretaker of balance. He holds power, yes, but not out of cruelty. He acts because he must, because it is the nature of things. And when he is challenged, he does not rage wildly, but responds with a weary inevitability. His patience is endless, because he has nothing to lose. Time, after all, belongs to him. Still, beneath that calm exterior lies a reminder of the finality he represents. When Jake's soul is threatened, when the possibility of truly losing him looms near, the story makes it clear that death does not bluff. His choices carry absolute consequence. He may be bargained with, but he cannot be ignored. One step too far, one wrong decision, and he can strip away existence in a heartbeat. This duality, patient yet unyielding, is what gives the dead world its quiet tension. The very landscape seems to echo this truth. The horizon never brightens. The shadows never lift. It is a world without seasons, without growth, without change. Yet it does not feel oppressive. Instead, it feels like a place outside of time, where all is suspended until the next stage reveals itself. It is neither cruel nor comforting, but balanced, like a scale holding the weight of every life that has ever passed through Ooo. And perhaps that is what makes this vision of the afterlife so haunting. It does not promise comfort. It does not threaten punishment. It simply waits, eternal and unchanging. It is a place where every soul, from the humblest candy person to the mightiest cosmic being, must eventually arrive. In that waiting, there is equality. No crown, no spell, no strength can hold back the journey. When we watch Finn and Jake in this realm, their presence feels jarring. They are full of movement, curiosity, and mischief so alive, even in this space of ending. Their colors and voices feel like sparks flickering in the dark. And this contrast reminds us that the dead world is not meant for the living. It is a realm that does not breathe or laugh. To be here while alive is to be a disruption, and one cannot linger too long without consequence. But even in their disruption, Finn and Jake remind us of something profound, that life's vibrancy only becomes sharper when placed against the backdrop of death. Their journey through this shadowy place highlights how precious each moment in Ooo truly is. For if even they must one day arrive here, then every adventure, every laugh, every bond carries a weight that cannot be ignored. When we step back and reflect on the dead world, we begin to notice how Adventure Time quietly reshapes our expectations of what an afterlife should be. In many stories, the afterlife is defined by judgment paradise for some, punishment for others. But in Ooo, the rules seem softer, less moralistic. It is not about good or bad, but about inevitability. The souls that arrive here are not placed into categories of reward or suffering. They are simply there, acknowledged, and held in that gray silence until their path unfolds further. This neutrality is strangely comforting. Imagine yourself as a soul wandering through that vast space. You would not fear flames or chains, nor expect golden gates. You would feel only the stillness of stone beneath your feet, the dim glow of a horizon that never changes, and the quiet presence of others drifting by. The absence of judgment in this vision makes the dead world less frightening and more contemplative. It is a mirror, not of one's deeds, but of the universal truth that all stories must eventually reach a pause. And yet this pause is not permanent. The show hints at layers beyond this place, other realms, other destinies. The dead world is only one chamber in a much larger design, like a threshold, where every traveler must stop before moving on. When Finn and Jake enter, their disruption reminds us of this unfinished quality. They are not meant to stay. Their lives are still unfolding, still weaving through the land of the living. And so their presence in death's domain feels like a skipped page in a book, something out of sequence. Death himself seems to understand this. He does not rage endlessly at the intrusion of the living. Instead, he responds with a kind of weary pragmatism. He knows they do not belong here, and he weighs his choices carefully. Should he allow them to return? Should he claim their souls? These decisions highlight the immense authority he carries, but also his restraint. He does not lash out blindly. His power is steady, like a river flowing in one direction. The interactions between Death and Jake are particularly poignant. Jake, with his easygoing nature and light-hearted humor, stands in stark contrast to the solemnity of the dead world. And yet beneath Jake's jokes and charm, we sense the weight of his vulnerability. He knows that in this place his life hangs in the balance. No stretching power, no clever trick can guarantee his return. He must face death not as a hero, but as a soul among countless others. This moment reveals something important about the nature of endings in Adventure Time. Even heroes, even those we love most, are not exempt. The afterlife is a shared destination, and its laws are beyond the reach of swords, spells, or even cosmic favor. This universality is what makes the dead world so striking. It is the one place where all beings, no matter their story, must eventually gather. The setting itself deepens this sense of equality. The land is bare, stripped of grandeur, stripped of distraction. There are no kingdoms or crowns, no towers or armies. All that remains is the quiet passage of soul. The silence is not cruel, it is impartial. The world itself does not care who you were, only that you are now here. And in that impartiality lies a strange sort of fairness. Consider also the symbolism of the throne. Death's seat of power is not adorned with jewels or guarded by legions. It is simple, stark, and commanding by presence alone. The throne does not need embellishment, because it represents something that requires no explanation. Mortality does not need decoration to be understood. It simply is, and the throne reflects this truth with quiet dignity. But the dead world is not just the concept of finality, it also becomes a stage for reflection. When Finn and Jake stand in its halls, we as viewers are asked to consider what it means to face the end. Would we bargain as they do? Would we cling to life? Or would we accept the stillness? These questions are not pressed upon us harshly, but whispered gently through the atmosphere of the realm. Adventure Time does not demand answers. It simply invites us to ponder. Even the idea of negotiation with death carries meaning. The fact that Finn can reason, argue, and even trick him shows that endings are not entirely rigid. There is room for chance, for choice, for a little bit of chaos even in the face of inevitability. This balance between finality and flexibility mirrors the way life itself often feels. Certain outcomes are unavoidable, but along the way there are paths and possibilities that shape how we arrive at. The dead world, then, is not only a setting for a single episode, but a reminder of the themes woven throughout the entire series. Adventure Time has always been about cycles, the rise and fall of kingdoms, the transformation of characters, the slow passage of eras across a post-apocalyptic landscape. The dead world sits at the center of these cycles, like the still point around which all motion turns. By showing us this realm, the show reminds us that every story, no matter how wild or colorful, carries within it the seed of an ending. Yet within that ending lies another beginning. For just as the dead world is not the final stop, death itself in Ooo is not the final silence. There are reincarnations, spirits that linger, and countless other planes hinted at in passing. Death's throne may mark the end of one journey, but it also opens the door to another. And this is perhaps the most comforting thought of all, that the stillness of the dead world is not an absolute void, but part of a greater tapestry where stories never truly vanish. As we drift deeper into this understanding, it becomes clear that the dead world is both unsettling and oddly peaceful. It is a place that strips away fear by presenting mortality not as punishment or loss, but as order. And in that order, there is calm. Souls drift, death waits, and the cycle continues, as it always has, and as it always will. One of the most fascinating qualities of the dead world is how it exists not only as a literal location, but also as a kind of mirror for the living. When Finn and Jake cross its threshold, the contrast is striking. Two bright, living beings moving among shadows and silence. The dead world does not change for them, but they illuminate its stillness by their very presence. And in that contrast, we as viewers are reminded of just how alive they are and how fragile that life can be. This mirror effect seems intentional. Adventure Time often places its characters in settings that reveal something essential about their nature. For Finn, the dead world emphasizes his role as a being who resists finality, who clings to life's possibilities even in the face of ending. For Jake, it underscores his carefree outlook, his ability to find humor even in the darkest of places, though beneath that humor lies the quiet recognition that his time, too, is limited. By walking through the dead world, they become reflections for us as well, embodying both the courage to face mortality and the vulnerability it exposes. The souls that drift here, though less defined, also tell their own quiet stories. We do not hear their voices often, but their presence is unmistakable. They are echoes of lives once lived, citizens of Ooo who once laughed, fought, or dreamed, now reduced to silent forms moving gently in the shadows. There is no hierarchy among them. A candy citizen and a warrior, a wizard and a wanderer, all are equal here. This unspoken equality is one of the most profound details of the dead world. In life, Ooo is full of chaos and conflict, with kingdoms clashing and power constantly shifting. But in death, all are gathered into the same stillness, their differences dissolved. Adventure Time does not linger on these anonymous souls, but their presence deepens the realm's atmosphere. It suggests that beyond the stories we follow, countless others are unfolding, countless lives are ending and beginning. The dead world is not just the stage for our heroes, but for everyone who has ever walked across the strange, fractured land of Ooo. We can also reflect on how the design of the dead world subtly amplifies these themes. Its muted colors, empty expanses, and stark structures are not meant to terrify, but to quiet the mind. The absence of detail leaves space for reflection, as though the world itself invites silence. Even Death's throne is simple, unadorned, almost austere. Every design choice seems to push us away from spectacle and toward contemplation, encouraging us to imagine not just what we are seeing, but what it means. In a way, the dead world feels like the pause at the end of a song, the space where the final note fades and we are left in silence before the next melody begins. The souls waiting here are part of that pause, suspended between endings and beginning. This metaphor fits beautifully with Adventure Time's broader storytelling style, which is always cyclical, always suggesting that no story is ever truly finished, only transformed into something new. The neutrality of this realm also allows the audience to project their own feelings onto it. Some might find it eerie, a reminder of inevitable endings. Others might find it peaceful, a place free from conflict or suffering. The ambiguity is what makes it powerful. Adventure Time does not dictate how we should feel about death. Instead, it presents the dead world as a canvas, inviting us to explore our own relationship with mortality. Death himself remains at the center of this canvas. His presence grounds the realm, giving it both authority and personality. His mixture of weariness and patience suggests that even for him, eternity has a rhythm, a slow, unchanging flow that has dulled both cruelty and kindness into something steadier. He is not heartless, but neither is he sentimental. He is a figure of balance, a reminder that life's wild unpredictability eventually finds its way to stillness. And yet, despite the stillness, the dead world is not the final word. Adventure Time makes it clear that there are layers upon layers of afterlife realm, whispers of the 50 dead worlds, hints of reincarnation, and even restless spirits that resist their passage. Death's throne is not an endpoint, but one part of a greater whole. The dead world serves as our first real glimpse into this cosmic system, a doorway that opens into mysteries far wider than a single throne room or a single skeletal figure. By the time Finn and Jake leave, we understand that their journey here was not just a plot point, but a thematic anchor. It reminded us of the cycles that shape Ooo, the inevitability of endings, and the strange beauty of neutrality. It showed us that death in Adventure Time is not meant to terrify or punish, but to gently balance the scales of existence. As we drift away from the halls of death, we are left with a feeling that is hard to name. A mixture of unease and calm, of fear and acceptance. The dead world has shown us a vision of the afterlife that is both unsettling and strangely peaceful. A realm that does not demand judgment, but simply waits, eternal and patient. And in that waiting, it invites us to keep wondering, what lies beyond these halls? What are the other realms hinted at in passing, the other worlds of the dead? What paths do souls take once they have crossed this threshold? These are the questions that will guide us further into our exploration of the afterlife in Adventure Time as we move from the single dead world to the countless variations suggested by the mysterious 50 dead worlds. If the dead world we have already seen feels mysterious, then the idea of the 50 dead worlds pushes that mystery into something far larger and stranger. It is one thing to witness death's throne room, quiet and singular, but it is another to learn that his domain is only one piece in a sprawling constellation of afterlife realms. Adventure Time never fully maps these places out, but the very mention of them opens the door to limitless imagination. The 50 dead worlds are first suggested, almost casually, spoken of as though the characters already accept their existence, as though they are common knowledge. And yet for us, the audience, they are anything but ordinary. The phrase carries weight. It suggests not a single afterlife, not even a few, but 50 distinct layers, each with its own rules, its own essence, perhaps even its own guardian. This raises the question, why so many? In our own traditions, afterlives are often singular or dual, places of peace or punishment, heaven or hell, light or shadow. But in Adventure Time, the universe has always resisted simple binary. Just as Ooo itself is made up of countless kingdoms, cultures, and creatures, so too is the afterlife divided into a rich tapestry of worlds. Each one may serve a different kind of soul, a different kind of ending, or perhaps a different kind of beginning. We are not shown all 50, but the hints scattered throughout the series are tantalizing. Some realms appear peaceful, almost dreamlike, where souls drift gently as if carried by a soft tide. Others are darker, wilder, perhaps even chaotic, echoing the struggles of the lives that once inhabited them. There is the nightosphere, which, though not technically one of the 50 dead worlds, sits close to them in tone, a realm of chaos and punishment ruled by Hunson Abadir. Its existence reminds us that afterlife realms can be as varied as the personalities who govern them. The number 50 itself feels important. It is not infinite, but it is vast. It suggests a structure, as though someone or something has set boundaries on how many kinds of death or how many afterlives the universe can contain. This fits with Adventure Time's cosmology, where chaos and order always circle one another, where randomness is balanced by design. 50 is enough to feel overwhelming, but not so many that it dissolves into pure infinity. What is most striking is how the 50 dead worlds expand our sense of what death means in Ooo. Rather than being one shared destiny, death becomes a branching path. Every soul may have its own destination, shaped by forces we can only guess at. Perhaps some are drawn to a world of light, while others are pulled toward a world of shadow. Perhaps some souls even choose, consciously or unconsciously, the realm that suits them best. This multiplicity also reflects the playful yet profound tone of Adventure Time itself. Life in Ooo is colorful, unpredictable, full of creatures and kingdoms that defy any single definition. Why should death be any different? Instead of one solemn afterlife, there are 50, each one a reflection of the variety and strangeness of existence. It feels fitting that in a world where candy people and vampires and magical dogs all coexist, there would be an afterlife spacious enough to hold every possibility. The show gives us brief glimpses of these places, like windows opening for just a moment before closing again. We see them when Finn dies in the episode Death in Bloom, when he and Jake's misadventures lead them into death's present. Later, in scattered references, characters allude to other dead worlds, often without explanation, as though they are as real and known to them as the Ice Kingdom or the Fire Kingdom. For the audience, this fragmented knowledge adds to the sense of awe. We are reminded that Ooo is a part of a larger cosmos, one that extends far beyond the screen. The 50 Dead Worlds also deepen the themes of choice and consequence. If there are many places for souls to go, then perhaps the shape of one's life affects where one ends up. Or perhaps it does not. And the randomness of the universe continues even after death. The ambiguity is deliberate. Adventure Time rarely gives us firm answers about morality or destiny. Instead, it presents a spectrum of possibilities, inviting us to wonder which world we ourselves might find waiting at the end. This openness makes the concept of the 50 Dead Worlds both comforting and unsettling. Comforting because it suggests that death is not a single, rigid end, but a field of paths, some gentle, some wild, some perhaps even joyful. Unsettling because it means we can never fully know where the path leads, never be certain which world will claim us. That tension between wonder and unease is at the heart of the show's storytelling, and it gives the afterlife of Adventure Time a haunting beauty. If we let our minds linger on the image of these 50 realms, we can almost imagine them as stars in a distant night sky. Each world glimmers faintly, self-contained, yet still connected by the quiet gravity of death itself. Adventure Time never unfolds them one by one, but the hints we do receive are enough to suggest a rich variety of landscapes and moods. One possibility is that each of these dead worlds mirrors a different type of existence. Mortals who lived ordinary lives might drift into one world, soft and muted, like the fading of a candle. Magical being born of cosmic forces might pass into a more radiant world, one where energy continues to vibrate long after the body has ended. And creatures of chaos, bound to darker appetites, could be drawn into stormy or distorted worlds, where their energy finds a more fitting home. The Nightosphere provides a helpful comparison, even if it is not numbered among the 50. It shows us that some afterlives can feel deeply personal, shaped by the ruler who commands them. Hunson Abadir fills his realm with both torment and whimsy, and that balance reflects who he is. If a single being can stamp their personality onto an entire plane, then perhaps each of the 50 dead worlds bears its own signature, its own guardian spirit or cosmic overseer. We might imagine one realm ruled by silence, where no words are spoken, only thoughts exchanged. Another might be endless fields under a red sky where souls wander forever but never feel tired. Another still might be a realm of rivers where every current carries a memory and the souls drift along, surrendering themselves to the flow of their own past. In a sense, the 50 dead worlds could represent the diversity of death experiences, just as Ooo represents the diversity of life. They remind us that death in Adventure Time is not uniform or predictable. It has layers, textures, and surprises. And this makes death feel less like an ending and more like another kind of adventure, one that expands far beyond the boundaries of Oo's forests and kingdom. It is also worth noticing how casually the show introduces this idea. The number 50 is dropped almost in passing, without elaboration, as though it is common knowledge among the characters. This detail reveals something subtle about the worldview of Adventure Time. The people of Ooo do not necessarily fear death in the way we often do. They live in a world where magic, reincarnation, and cosmic entities are everyday truths. For them, hearing that there are 50 afterlives may be no more unusual than hearing that there are many distant kingdoms. This casualness makes the concept feel both vast and familiar, as though it has always been woven into the fabric of their world. But for us as viewers, the mystery is captivating. We cannot help but wonder what all 50 might look like. Could some resemble the kingdoms we already know, only turned inside out or bathed in shadow? Might some be realms of joy, playgrounds of light where souls feel no sorrow? Or are there worlds where death is heavier, places of endless trials that echo the struggles of life? The very lack of answers gives the idea a dreamlike quality. We are left to fill in the gaps with our own imaginations, drifting from one possibility to the next, like someone half asleep, moving between waking thought and dream. The multiplicity of dead worlds also reflects Adventure Time's fascination with the multiverse. Throughout the series, we see alternate realities, pocket dimensions, and cosmic layers beyond the mortal plane. The 50 dead worlds are not separate from this larger pattern, but rather another expression of it. Just as life can split into countless possibilities, so can death. In fact, the existence of 50 suggests that death is not a singular conclusion, but a continuation of that same branching, ever-dividing tree of reality. In this way, the 50 dead worlds sit at the edge of both mystery and comfort. Mystery because we do not know their shapes, their rules, or their guardian. Comfort because they promise that there is not just one place where all things end, but many places, each with its own kind of story. For a show so deeply concerned with imagination, friendship, and the endlessness of possibility, this vision of the afterlife feels perfectly fitting. And when we let that idea settle, it feels almost like a lullaby for the soul. Instead of picturing one dark and final void, we are invited to imagine a whole chorus of worlds, each singing its own quiet song, each waiting with its own embrace. The 50 dead worlds are not places of despair, but echoes of the diversity of life itself stretched into eternity. If we pause to consider how these realms might connect to the characters we know, the 50 dead worlds begin to feel less like distant abstractions and more like places just barely out of reach. Finn's brief visit to the dead world in Death in Bloom gave us only one narrow glimpse, but it hints at the broader truth. Every soul in Ooo, no matter how strange or ordinary, has its own journey beyond. Take Jake. His magical nature makes his destiny feel uncertain. Would he drift into the same world as a mortal, or would his shape-shifting cosmic bloodline pull him toward something stranger? Jake's powers are linked to alien origin, a hint of something beyond Earth itself. It is not hard to imagine a dead world designed for beings like him, where forms constantly shift and nothing stays solid for long. A place where identity is fluid, and the afterlife becomes a playground of endless transformation. For Marceline, the story might be different still. Part vampire, part demon, her existence has always been liminal, caught between mortality and something darker. Would she find herself in a world that reflects that duality? Perhaps one side bathed in shadow, the other lit by memory. A place where she could wander forever between light and dark, never forced to choose, always inhabiting the in-between. Such a realm would mirror her own struggles in life, her own attempts to reconcile her human softness with the vampiric hunger and demonic heritage she carried. The very number 50 almost begs us to imagine how different souls might find different homes. not as punishment, but as resonance, like a tuning fork, drawing each spirit to the note that matches its vibration. This idea echoes throughout Adventure Time's storytelling. Lives are unique, and so too are the endings that follow them. The symbolism runs deeper still. When we think of 50, we might see it as a balance point large enough to suggest variety, but small enough to suggest structure. 50 is neither random nor infinite. It gives the sense that the cosmos of Adventure Time is ordered, even if that order is too vast for mortals to fully comprehend. Just as there are countless kingdoms, elements, and dimensions woven into Oo's history, so too are there layers of death, each one carefully placed. It suggests that nothing, not even dying, falls completely into chaos. There is always some rhythm, some quiet design beneath it. The 50 Dead Worlds also resonate with Adventure Time's recurring theme of cycle. We see this in reincarnation in the way Finn himself has lived through many lives across time. To imagine 50 afterlives is to imagine a cosmos that never stops cycling, never stops creating new paths. One world might lead back into life, another might serve as a resting place, still and eternal. Yet another might be a place of learning, where souls reflect on their past before moving forward. In this way, the 50 worlds are not isolated destinations, but steps along an endless path. When Finn encounters death, he does so with the same mixture of fear and curiosity that marks his entire journey. He is young, unprepared, but still brave enough to face what lies ahead. And through Finn's perspective, we too are given permission to approach death not just as an ending, but as something strange and even wondrous. His story does not reveal all the 50 dead worlds, but it allows us to sense their presence, lingering beyond what we can see. Even small references to these worlds carry weight. When other characters allude to them, often without pause, it reminds us that for the people of Ooo, the afterlife is woven into daily understanding. This reflects a culture where magic and myth are ordinary. For them, the dead worlds are not theoretical or hidden. They are real places, as certain as the Candy Kingdom or the Ice Kingdom. And yet for us, this casual familiarity only deepens the sense of awe because it shows how much larger their world truly is compared to what we see on screen. Perhaps what makes the idea so haunting is that we never get to see the map. The doors are closed to us. We are only given fragments, glimpses, and hints. But this is part of Adventure Time's gift, the ability to suggest worlds so vast that our imaginations must rise to meet them. In the quiet between episodes, we find ourselves picturing those realms, filling in their details as though they were dreams we half remember. And in doing so, the 50 dead worlds become more personal, because each viewer may imagine them different. There is also an unspoken comfort in their multiplicity. If there is not just one afterlife, but many, then perhaps there is room for every kind of soul. Room for heroes and villains, for mortals and monsters, for beings who never quite fit anywhere in life. In this vision, death is not a judgment, but an unfolding, a spreading of paths to fit the shape of every existence. It is an afterlife that reflects compassion, even if it remains mysterious, because it allows for variety, for difference, for the strange and the ordinary alike. In this way, the 50 dead worlds mirror the world of Ooo itself. They are strange, diverse, sometimes unsettling, but always expansive, always full of hidden corners. Just as no two kingdoms in Ooo are alike, no two afterlives need to be. Death in this story is not uniformity, but variety, not a single door closing, but 50 doors opening, each one leading somewhere new. When we think of the 50 dead worlds as a whole, the image that comes to mind is not of a single place, but of a great constellation scattered across the unseen sky of the universe. Each world is a lantern in the distance, faintly glowing, yet unreachable, until the moment one must walk its path. They are not abstract concepts, but destinations, each as real as any kingdom in Ooo, waiting quietly at the edges of existence. It is natural to wonder if each of these realms has its own keeper. We know of death, seated in his silent chamber, a figure at once stern and weary. He presides over one of the realms, perhaps the most central, perhaps the most familiar to mortals. But if there are 50, then surely death cannot be alone. Perhaps there are other guardians, other cosmic stewards, who watch over their worlds. Some might be solemn and grave, others playful or strange. In the Nightosphere, Hunson Abadir rules with chaos and whimsy, and though his realm is not numbered among the 50, it hints at the idea that each world could bear the mark of a single, shaping presence. The thought of 50 keepers gives the afterlife a kind of richness, as if the universe itself is a court of figures, each tending to their own corner of eternity. Some might welcome souls with open arms, others might test them, pushing them through trials before they can rest. Some might be almost indifferent, leaving spirits to drift without guidance, like leaves on the wind. In this way, the 50 dead worlds mirror the diversity of rulers and powers we see in life, only magnified to a cosmic scale. And yet, even without meeting these guardians, the very existence of the dead worlds deepens the lore of Adventure Time. They tell us that life in Ooo is only one chapter in a much larger book. Every story we see, every kingdom, every friendship, is just a fragment of something wider, a cosmos layered not only with living realms, but with endless echoes beyond them. The show does not spell these truths out in detail, but rather lets them hum quietly in the background, like a melody always half heard. This subtlety makes the concept more powerful, not less. To map all 50 worlds in detail would be to lessen their mystery. Instead, they remain dreamlike, just outside our reach, forcing us to imagine them for ourselves. This is what gives them their bedtime quality. They are like stories we tell in whispers, tales of faraway places that we know exist, but we'll never see until our own journey takes us there. What makes the 50 dead worlds so distinct within the lore is the balance they strike between the ordinary and the cosmic. On the one hand, they are treated casually in dialogue, as though everyone already accepts them. On the other, they carry an immense weight, reshaping our understanding of death in the Adventure Time universe. This balance is the heart of the show's storytelling style, mixing the everyday with the cosmic, and the silly with the profound, the familiar with the unfathomable. When we look at the wider themes of the series, the dead worlds fit perfectly. Adventure Time is, at its core, about journeys. Journeys through forests, through kingdoms, through friendships and heartbreaks, through mistakes and redemption. And what is death in this vision but another journey? Not a conclusion, but a passage into one of 50 doors, each one leading to new experiences, new discoveries, new ways of being. It is a quiet reassurance that nothing truly ends. Things only change form, moving from one chapter to the next. There is also a sense of inclusivity in the very number. 50 is not a small, exclusive handful, nor is it infinite in a way that feels ungraspable. It is vast enough to hold every kind of being, but still structured, still manageable. It suggests that the cosmos has made room for everyone. Mortals, magical creatures, cosmic entities, and even the smallest of candy people all have a place somewhere in the great expanse of death's many worlds. This vision turns the fear of death into something softer, something even comforting. Instead of imagining a single end, we can picture 50 paths, each with its own light, its own rhythm. Perhaps some souls wander restlessly, while others find peace. Perhaps some are reborn, while others linger. The 50 dead worlds do not limit the imagination. They expand it, letting us think of death not with dread, but with curiosity. And so when we drift back from this thought, it feels less like we have solved a mystery and more like we have entered a dream. The 50 dead worlds remain veiled, but their presence lingers like a gentle shadow across the lore of Ooo. They whisper that the cosmos is larger than we know, and that life and death are only 2 steps in an endless dance. As the characters of Adventure Time laugh, fight, and grow in their strange and colorful world, we are reminded that every story continues beyond the screen. Some stories flow back into life, others into silence, others still into strange, wondrous places we cannot yet name. But all of them belong to the same grand pattern, the same cosmic web that stretches across time and space. The 50 Dead Worlds are a reminder of this pattern. They are not there to frighten us or to dictate one single truth. They are there to invite us into wonder, to make us pause, and to leave us with a gentle question. When the journey ends, which door will open for us? And with that, the second segment of our story finds its rest, leaving the image of 50 quiet worlds glowing faintly in the distance, each one a lantern waiting in the dark. When we think of death in Adventure Time, it is tempting to imagine a single figure, sitting on a throne in a shadowed hall, a skeletal being, draped in dark robes, watching over the countless souls who pass through his gates. And indeed, we are shown this familiar figure, the death who rules the dead world. But as the story unfolds across the series, we begin to realize that death in Ooo wears many faces, not bound to one single image, but scattered across forms and beings that each embody a different aspect of the end. The first and most literal is the death we meet in Death in Bloom. He appears as a tall, hooded skeleton with long, bony fingers and an air of weary patience. He does not rant or rage, nor does he welcome with warmth. Instead, he rules with a strange, detached calm, a gatekeeper who does his work not out of cruelty, but out of inevitability. His presence reminds us that in Adventure Time, death is not painted as an enemy. It is part of the order of something both frightening and necessary, both strange and oddly ordinary. Yet beyond this figure, we encounter others who blur the lines of what death means. The cosmic owl, for instance, is not death itself, but a messenger of it. He appears in dreams, his glowing eyes piercing through the veil of sleep to deliver glimpses of destiny. Whenever the cosmic owl visits, it is a sign that mortality is stirring, that an end may be approaching. He is not the ruler of souls, but he is an omen, a herald whose very presence shifts the course of life. And then there is Prismo, the Wishmaster, a being who lives in a dimension outside of time. At first glance, he may not seem connected to death at all, but his very existence is tied to the cycle of mortality. Prismo's life is anchored to the dream of an old man sleeping somewhere in another plane. When that man dies, Prismo vanishes, a cosmic entity undone by the simplest human truth. In this way, Prismo represents how even the most powerful beings are not exempt from death's reach. His story folds mortality and immortality into one delicate paradox. Hunson Abadir, too, bears the flavor of death. Though his nightosphere may not be one of the 50 dead worlds, it echoes with the tones of punishment and afterlife. His chaotic rule shows us how death can also be imagined as torment, as a place of imbalance where souls are tossed into endless trials. Hunson is not death in the literal sense, but he is an afterlife keeper of his own design, reminding us that death can take the shape of power, of authority, and even of absurd cruelty. Each of these figures contributes to a larger tapestry, one where death is not singular, but multifaceted. It can be skeletal and silent. It can be cosmic and prophetic. It can be playful, cruel, or even absurd. Just as life in Ooo refuses to be one thing, death too refuses to wear only one face. There is something deeply comforting in this variety. It means that death is not reduced to one rigid truth. Instead, it is fluid, changing depending on who encounters it and what stage of the story we are in. For Finn, meeting death is a rite of passage, a reminder that his adventures carry weight. For Jake, encountering the cosmic owl in dreams reminds him of the fragile thread of fate that even he cannot outrun. For beings like Prismo, death is not an end but a transformation, a reminder that everything, no matter how infinite, is bound by cycle. In all of these forms, death in Adventure Time is not a wall, but a mirror. It reflects the life that came before and the choices made, the destinies fulfilled. Sometimes it is solemn, sometimes playful, sometimes sorrowful, but it is always present, woven into the fabric of the universe as quietly as the stars overhead. If the dead worlds and their rulers give us one view of death, then the way characters respond to them gives us another. Because in Adventure Time, death is not just about the beings who govern it, but about how the living grapple with its present. Each encounter reflects a different philosophy, a different emotional truth, and together they paint a wide-ranging portrait of how mortality is understood in Ooo. Consider the way Finn reacts when he first confronts death directly. Finn, who so often charges into battle without hesitation, finds himself suddenly confronted with the permanence of loss. In Death in Bloom, he and Jake accidentally kill Princess Bubblegum's beloved plant, forcing them to travel to the dead world. The mission starts with humor, the boys fumbling their way through bizarre terrain, but it quickly transforms into something heavier. Finn must bargain with death, not with strength or violence, but with a musical duel. This moment matters because it frames death not as something to be conquered, but as something to be respected and negotiated with. Finn does not leave with dominance over death. He leaves with a new awareness of what it means to carry responsibility when life is fragile. Jake's perspective, however, is different. Jake's relationship with death often comes through his encounters with the cosmic owl, where Finn's lessons are about action and consequence. Jake's are about fate and acceptance. The cosmic owl's dream visits are rarely direct, but they always cast a shadow on Jake's choices. To see the owl is to know that some part of life is closing, some chapter ending. And Jake, with his easygoing attitude, often embodies the idea that resisting fate is less important than embracing it. His acceptance of death becomes most poignant in his final journey, when he chooses not to fight against the pull of the afterlife, but to walk into it with peace. Through Jake, death is not a foe, but a natural continuation, something to be met with calm curiosity. And then there are the cosmic beings whose brushes with mortality carry a different weight. Prismo, who grants wishes and bends reality, ultimately relies on a fragile thread of human life for his existence. When that thread is cut, he vanishes not destroyed in battle, not undone by villainy, but simply erased because death has touched the one who dreamed him into being. It is a startling reminder that no matter how vast or powerful a being may seem, mortality is a current that flows everywhere, shaping even the farthest reaches of existence. Prismo's end is not loud or violent. It is quiet, like the closing of a dream, and that makes it resonate all the more deeply. Even Hudson Abadir's Nightosphere adds a perspective. His chaotic afterlife realm may seem more like a playground of absurd horrors than a solemn resting place, but it represents another side of death, the way it can be imagined as punishment, a realm where order and morality collide with endless consequence. For those who fear death, Hudson's world might look like the truest version of it, a place where chaos never ends, where the soul is never at peace. By including this vision alongside others, Adventure Time acknowledges how cultures and minds shape their own visions of what comes after. Death is not only what happens, it is also what we believe it to be. Together, these faces, Death himself, the cosmic owl, Prismo, Hudson, and the characters' interactions form a constellation of ideas. Death is final, but it is also symbolic. It is destiny, but it is also choice. It is cruel, but it is also peaceful. Adventure Time never commits to just one answer, and in doing so, it reflects the complexity of how we think about mortality in our own lives. This shifting portrayal is what gives death in Ooo its strange sense of comfort. When children first encounter it in the series, they may laugh at the skeletal death with his dry wit. When older viewers return to the same scenes, they may feel the weight of Jake's acceptance or the sorrow of Prismo's disappearance. The many faces of death allow it to mean something different depending on where you are in your own journey. Just as in real life, our understanding of death evolves, and Adventure Time mirrors that truth. If we linger for a while on the symbolism of these different faces of death, we begin to see that they are not contradictions, but pieces of a larger cycle. Each appearance of death in Adventure Time is like a shard of stained glass, unique in color and shape. But when placed together, they create a fuller window into the mysteries of existence. Take Finn once again, our human hero in a land of candy kingdoms and cosmic beings. Finn's many encounters with death are not isolated. They are part of a long arc, beginning in innocence and ending in awareness. In his early adventures, death is something outside of himself, a puzzle or an adversary to be bested. But as he grows, death becomes something woven into his own identity. By the time we learned of his reincarnations, that he has lived as countless beings before. From a comet to a leaf, the presence of death transforms from a looming shadow into a doorway. For Finn, death is no longer just an end, but part of the rhythm that allows new beginning. Each life that ends gives rise to another, and each ending carries forward pieces of wisdom, however faint. Jake, too, embodies this rhythm. His final acceptance of death, when he peacefully drifts into the afterlife, is not portrayed as a tragedy. Instead, it is a completion. For a character defined by stretching, bending, and reshaping himself into endless forms, how fitting it is that his ultimate lesson is one of release. His death is not resisted, but embraced, almost like the final pose of a long, graceful dance. The face of death Jake meets is not grim or terrifying, but soft, almost gentle, because it is the face he has chosen to see. Then there are the larger-than-life beings who remind us that even the most powerful must bow to mortality in some form. Prismo's quiet vanishing, when the mortal who dreamt him into being dies, shows how even immortality can be tethered to something fragile. It is a tender irony. The dreamer outlasted by the dream. Hunson Abadir, by contrast, embodies a more eternal punishment. Yet even he is bound by the rules of his realm, change the role he plays. And the cosmic owl, drifting between slumber and prophecy, serves as a bridge between the living and the dead, whispering that fate itself has edges that cannot be crossed. The many faces of death also echo the way different cultures within the Adventure Time world interpret mortality. Candy people, with their bright innocence, rarely dwell on it. For them, death is often played for absurdity, a brief hiccup in their sugary existence. For flame people, who are bound to the cycle of fire and ash, death feels almost like a transformation, a natural shift from one form of energy to another. Marceline, the vampire queen, carries death like a companion, immortal yet haunted by endless loss. She has learned to hold grief without letting it consume her. And for Ice King, whose mind has been fractured by time and magic, death is a longing for peace, a release from confusion. Each of these perspectives, scattered across Ooo, reflects a unique face of death, shaped by experience and culture. What's most soothing in a way is how the show never treats one vision as more true than another. Instead, it invites us to sit with them all, to let them overlap and blend, just as a dream might. Death is death, the skeletal ruler of his domain. But he is also the cosmic owl's silent prophecy, Prismo's quiet erasure, Hunson's chaotic punishment, Jake's serene farewell, and Finn's path toward renewal. Together, these portraits remind us that death cannot be pinned down to a single story. It is as vast and changeable as the skies above Ooo. And perhaps that is the hidden comfort. Because in a world so filled with chaos, magic, and uncertainty, death's many faces teach us that there is not just one way to imagine the end. For some, it may look like music, a duel with a skeletal figure. For others, it may be a dream visited by an owl, or a fiery transformation into ash, or a walk into a peaceful horizon. In allowing death to be so many things, Adventure Time offers its viewers, young and old, permission to find the version that brings them the most peace. Even when the subject is dark, the tone remains soft, contemplative, and often tinged with humor. Death is not denied or erased, but it is also not painted as unbearable. It is treated with the same whimsical seriousness as any other part of the Adventure Time universe. Mysterious, strange, but not without warmth. When we draw these threads together, the many faces of death in Adventure Time begin to form a picture of balance. It is not a rigid balance, like a set of scales fixed in place, but a living, breathing one, shifting, adjusting, and adapting to the lives it touches. Every character, every realm, every symbol of mortality seems to whisper the same truth, that death is not the opposite of life, but its companion, walking beside it quietly, shaping its meaning. Think of how death frames the adventures of Finn and Jake. Without the possibility of an ending, their stories would lose their urgency, their choices would lack weight. Yet with death waiting, whether in the form of a duel with a skeletal ruler, or a dream visited by the cosmic owl, each act of bravery glows more brightly. Life is not lessened by death's presence, it is illuminated. The series encourages us to see endings not as interruptions, but as brushstrokes that complete the painting. This is why we encounter death in so many guises. A single face could not capture all its shade. To Marceline, death is the lingering ache of outliving everyone she loves, yet it is also the reason she treasures the fleeting moments of song, laughter, and companionship. To Prismo, death is a quiet tether, a reminder that even infinite wishes are tied to the fragile thread of a sleeping man. To Ice King, death hovers like a soft longing, a rest he cannot quite reach, and yet in his tragedy, we glimpse tenderness for even confusion and loss, softened by the idea of eventual peace. There is a poetic gentleness in it. Adventure Time does not scream its lessons or push us toward a single conclusion. Instead, it drifts like a dream, letting us walk alongside its characters as they encounter death in their own way. Some fight it, some accept it, some transform through it, but all are changed by it, and in watching them, we too are invited to reflect on what it might mean for us. The show also suggests that death itself is not static. It shifts depending on the realm, the being, the moment. It can be a ruler in a skeletal mask. It can be the flicker of an owl's eye in a dream. Or it can be the release of laughter, echoing into silence. It is as varied as the lives that precede it. And in this shifting nature lies comfort. If death can be many things, then it does not have to be one single, terrifying certainty. It can be a passage, a transformation, a continuation in another form. Perhaps the most beautiful expression of this truth comes in Jake's final journey. When he leaves the living world and steps into the dead world, he does not resist, nor does he despair. He is calm, playful, almost joyous. His death is not an ending filled with dread, but a reunion with friends, a return to balance. The face of death he meets is gentle because his heart is gentle. This reminds us that what we bring into death may shape what death looks like. It is a mirror reflecting the life lived before it. Adventure Time, in its quiet wisdom, does not deny the sadness of death. It acknowledges the grief, the longing, the fear. But it balances this with humor, with imagination, with cosmic wonder. Death is not reduced to darkness. It is painted with many colors. And in this kaleidoscope of interpretations, the series offers a lullaby of sorts, a reassurance that the end is not a void, but a part of the story, as rich and varied as any adventure that came before. As we settle into the thought of these many faces, it becomes clear that the real power of death in Adventure Time lies not in endings at all, but in transformation. Every encounter with death reshapes the characters who face it, and through them, it reshapes us as viewers. We are invited to see death not only as finality, but as renewal, as change, as something that keeps the story moving forward in new forms. And so, when we think of the skeletal ruler, the dreamlike owl, the fading wishmaster, the chaotic nightosphere king, or the peaceful passing of a stretchy dog, we do not have to choose which one is the real face of death. They all are. Together, they remind us that mortality is vast, unknowable, and yet strangely gentle when approached with acceptance. Death is not one figure waiting at the end of the path. It is a shifting presence, a chorus of voices, a mosaic of faces, each reflecting a different truth, yet all leading to the same horizon. And that horizon, soft and unending, is not a wall but a sky, a place where endings and beginnings blur into one another, where the cycle continues, and where every story, no matter how strange, finds its rest. Among the many mysteries hidden within the world of Adventure Time, few are as quietly profound as the idea of reincarnation. Where the dead worlds and death's many faces speak of endings, reincarnation whispers of beginning. It is the gentle turning of a wheel, a reminder that in this universe, death may not be a final chapter, but rather a pause before another story begins. At the heart of this mystery stands Finn the human. We first meet him as a boy full of energy and fire, racing through the Land of Ooo with Jake at his side. He is courageous, sometimes reckless, but always driven by a sense of justice. And yet, as the series unfolds, we begin to see hints that his life is not the first in his journey. Finn, we learn, is part of a much older cycle, one that stretches back through ages, across forms both human and beyond. His soul, it seems, has been walking the world in many guises, experiencing countless lifetimes before the one we know. One of the clearest glimpses into this cycle comes from The Vault, a haunting episode that lingers in the quiet spaces of memory and identity. In it, Finn discovers Shoko, one of his past selves. She is a scarred, one-armed thief who once roamed the Candy Kingdom in search of riches. Unlike Finn, Shoko's life was harsh and lonely. She stole not out of malice, but out of necessity, and her story ended in tragedy. When she fell into a toxic river, her body lost to the water. For a long time, her spirit lingered, bound to the Candy Kingdom, until Finn finally uncovered her past and brought peace to her restless soul. Through Shoko, we learn that Finn is not simply a boy born in Ooo after the Great Mushroom War. He is part of a continuum, a chain of lives, strung together by something greater than memory. Each life, whether joyful or sorrowful, seems to leave traces behind, shaping the next in subtle ways. Shoko's loneliness becomes Finn's yearning for connection. Her courage, hidden beneath hardship, blooms fully in him. In this way, reincarnation in Adventure Time is not about erasing the past, but about carrying it forward in quiet, unseen ways. Finn's story also ties into the cosmic scale. In The Comet, we learn of the Catalyst Comet, a mysterious force that crashes to Earth once every 1,000 years. Each comet carries with it a soul, destined to influence the world in profound ways. One of these comets, glowing blue, was Finn himself in a past existence. Another, glowing green, would become the mischievous Orgalorg, who we know better as Gunther the Penguin. In this cosmic rhythm, Finn's reincarnations are not limited to human forms. His soul has traveled through stars, through forces of destiny, before taking on flesh and bone once more. This idea expands our sense of reincarnation beyond the personal and into the universal. It is not just that Finn has lived other lives, but that his very essence has moved through states of existence far greater than he could imagine. He has been a comet streaking across the void, a thief wandering the kingdom, and now a boy striving to be a hero. Each form is different, but each carries the same spark, reshaping itself with each turn of the cycle. Reincarnation in Adventure Time does not come with clear rules or a simple map. It is left mysterious, like a dream half-remembered. We do not know exactly why some souls return or why they take the forms. Instead, the series invites us to reflect on the idea itself that who we are may be shaped not just by the life we live now, but by countless lives before, each leaving quiet imprints on the soul. And in the soft, bedtime way the show presents it, reincarnation feels less like a riddle to be solved and more like a comfort. It suggests that endings are never the whole story, that when one life falls silent, another may rise, carrying with it pieces of what was left behind. For Finn, it means that his bravery is not just his own, but the culmination of many paths walked before him. For us as viewers, it is a reminder that the self may be far deeper than what we see in a single lifetime. Reincarnation, as revealed through Finn's journey, is not merely a mechanic of the universe, but a thread of meaning that runs beneath his character. Each past life offers a lens through which his present can be better understood, and each glimpse into those past selves adds a layer of quiet depth to his story. After learning of Shoko, Finn begins to recognize that there are echoes within him that do not come from his childhood alone. Shoko's bravery in the face of hardship lingers in his own willingness to stand against impossible odds. Her yearning for acceptance resonates in Finn's own deep desire to connect with others, even when he does not fully understand why. These echoes suggest that reincarnation is not just about being born again, but about carrying fragments of the past forward, not memories in the ordinary sense, but imprints on the soul, shaping behavior and personality in subtle ways. The comet deepens this theme even further. In the comet, Finn is confronted with the revelation that he was once the spirit of the blue catalyst comet, a being of immense cosmic significance. The catalyst comet is said to bring change to the world every 1,000 years, sometimes through destruction, sometimes through rebirth. For Finn, this knowledge reframes his entire existence. He is not just a boy who stumbled into adventure, but a soul tied to the great cycles of the universe. His role as a hero is not an accident, but part of a larger rhythm, one that began long before he was born. And yet, what makes this idea so gentle, so bedtime-like in its delivery is that the show does not use it to overwhelm Finn with destiny. Instead, it simply adds a layer of mystery, a whisper from the stars. Finn does not become a hero because he was once a comet. He was always a hero because of the choices he made, the love he carried, the courage he displayed. The comet is only another chapter in his long soul story, and one that reminds us that reincarnation does not erase free will, simply provides a backdrop, a foundation upon which new lives can build. This interplay between destiny and choice is at the heart of reincarnation in Adventure Time. If the soul carries forward across lives, then it brings with it patterns, tendencies, and unresolved longing. But each new incarnation also has the freedom to transform those patterns, to grow beyond them. Shoko's solitude is transformed into Finn's community. The comet's destructive potential becomes Finn's protective spirit. In this way, reincarnation is not a cycle of repetition, but of evolution, a spiral that winds higher with each turn. We can also see reflections of this mystery in other characters. The idea that souls can pass through different forms hints that reincarnation may not be unique to Finn. The catalyst comets themselves show that countless beings have carried their essence through time, influencing Ooo in ways both great and small. Orgalorg, the ancient entity reborn as Gunther the Penguin, is perhaps the most striking example. Once a cosmic terror, he is reduced to a waddling, comical sidekick. Yet his essence lingers, waiting for the right moment to awaken. This mirrors Finn's journey in reverse, a soul once vast and cosmic, now grounded in mortal life, while a soul once monstrous finds a quieter form in which to exist. In the soft light of bedtime storytelling, these patterns invite us to see reincarnation not as a rigid doctrine, but as a gentle metaphor. It suggests that every being is more than the moment they live in, that behind the eyes of each character, and perhaps behind our own, lies a history deeper than memory, a lineage of spirit that moves forward with every breath. Adventure Time never explains how or why this happens, and that is part of its beauty. The mystery itself becomes the comfort, like a lullaby without words, reminding us that even if one life ends, the song continues in another key. In the broader lore of Ooo, this cycle ties into the way time itself seems to bend and repeat. The Great Mushroom War destroyed the old world, but out of its ashes rose new kingdoms, new lives, new stories. In much the same way, souls too are reshaped by endings, finding fresh forms in which to begin again. Just as kingdoms reincarnate, so do people, comets, and even ideas. Everything in Adventure Time seems to hum with this rhythm of renewal. When we look more closely at Finn's past lives, it becomes clear that each incarnation is not just a separate existence, but a reflection of themes that define his soul. In Shoko, we see resilience born of hardship and the yearning for redemption. In the comet, we glimpse cosmic influence, the power to alter the course of history. And in Finn himself, we find the union of those threads, a soul that carries both the weight of the stars and the struggles of the earth, bound together in the heart of a boy who simply wants to do what is right. Shoko's story lingers like a shadow beneath Finn's own. She was not given the same chance for companionship, nor the safety of a loving family. Her world was one of survival, her body marked by scars and loss. And yet, she clung to life with determination. That determination, though twisted by loneliness, seems to echo in Finn's spirit. Unlike Shoko, Finn finds connection with Jake, with Princess Bubblegum, with the people of Ooo. But perhaps it is because of Shoko's struggles that Finn values those connections so deeply. Her pain becomes his empathy. Her longing becomes his commitment to friendship. This is the subtle beauty of reincarnation in Adventure Time. Past lives are not erased, but woven gently into the present, shaping it in ways unseen. The comet, by contrast, represents a more cosmic side of Finn's reincarnation. It shows that his soul has not only walked among mortals, but has soared through the void, carrying immense potential. The catalyst comets are said to be agents of change, forces that tilt the world toward new eras. Finn's connection to this cycle suggests that his role as a hero was not purely chance. He is tied to the rhythm of transformation itself. Yet what makes this so touching is that Finn never sees himself as destined or grand. He chooses to live with humility as a friend and protector. The comet might mark him as special, but it is his humanity that makes him beloved. The interplay between these incarnations, the lonely thief, the cosmic comet, the boy with a heroic heart paints reincarnation as a spectrum. A soul is not fixed in one role forever. It can move from power to vulnerability, from isolation to community, from destruction to healing. Each lifetime offers a new lesson, a new way of being, a new chance to grow. This is perhaps why Adventure Time presents reincarnation not as a burden, but as a gift. It allows for endless transformation, endless possibilities. And yet, reincarnation is not portrayed as mechanical or clinical. It is mysterious, soft, and dreamlike. When Finn glimpses Shoko in the vault, it is not through charts or explanations, but through visions, memories that drift like mist. When the comet appears in the sky, glowing and eternal, it feels more like a symbol in a dream than a simple fact of biology. This presentation mirrors the way we often encounter our own sense of continuity in half-remembered feelings, in déjà vu, in the quiet sense that we are more than just the sum of this moment. Reincarnation also ties into the broader theme of cycles that runs throughout Adventure Time. Ooo itself is a reincarnated world, built atop the ruins of the old Earth destroyed by the Mushroom War. The kingdoms rise and fall, just as lives begin and end. And in each cycle, something new emerges. Fire becomes ash, and ash sparks new flames. Ice melts, water flows, and then freezes again. The natural world hums with this rhythm, and the souls of its inhabitants mirror it. Everything in Ooo, from the largest comet to the smallest creature, is part of this endless dance of transformation. For viewers, especially when framed in a bedtime story tone, this idea can be deeply soothing. It suggests that nothing is ever truly lost. Shoko may have perished, but her essence lives on in Finn. The comet may have streaked across the sky, but its spark remains in his choices. Even when Jake passes into the dead world, the love he shared ripples forward, shaping the lives of others. Reincarnation becomes a way of saying that endings are never absolute. They are simply gateways leading into beginnings that may take forms we cannot yet imagine. This mystery is left deliberately unresolved by the show. We never receive a clear map of how reincarnation works, or why some souls return while others do not. Instead, the uncertainty becomes part of its beauty. It reflects the way we, too, wonder about what lies beyond life, about whether pieces of us continue in forms unseen. The series offers no rigid answers, but it offers comfort in the form of story. It lets reincarnation be a dream, one that reassures us that the song of existence is longer and richer than a single verse. And so, as Finn continues his adventures, we can imagine that each step he takes carries echoes of countless footsteps before. Each choice he makes is shaped not only by his own heart, but by the lessons of lives past. In this way, reincarnation, Adventure Time, is not an abstract idea, but a living thread, woven quietly into every moment of his journey. In many ways, Finn's reincarnation story reminds us that identity is never singular. We are not only who we are today, but also who we have been and who we may yet become. Adventure Time communicates this through symbols rather than strict rules, leaving space for us to imagine how souls weave across time. Finn is not only the child who grew up with Jake, not only the boy who carries a sword, he is also Shoko's yearning for redemption, the comet's spark of change, and the countless threads of existence that stretch beyond what we see. This gives every moment of his journey a subtle depth. When he protects someone vulnerable, we can almost sense Shoko whispering through him, a reminder of what it feels like to be alone. When he confronts forces larger than himself, the comet seems to shine behind him, guiding his courage. When he chooses kindness, he is not only Finn the human, but a vessel for all the lives and lessons that came before. And perhaps that is why his story feels so profound, despite its simplicity, because it is the story of a soul learning to grow through lifetime. Reincarnation in Adventure Time is not presented as a cycle of punishment or reward. It does not speak of karma in the traditional sense, nor of judgment. Instead, it feels more like a natural rhythm, as effortless as breathing, as inevitable as dawn following night. Souls do not move forward because they must, but because they are part of a cosmic current, carried gently from one form to the next. This framing is both mystical and comforting. It suggests that life, however brief, is never wasted. Every action, every struggle, every small kindness is carried onward into what comes next. One of the most poignant of this idea is how it reframes mortality. In Ooo, death is real and often deeply felt. We see characters grieve. We see kingdoms crumble. We see lives end. And yet reincarnation softens the edges of this truth. It does not deny the pain of loss, but it whispers that loss is not the whole story. Something lingers, something carries on. Whether in the form of a soul reborn or simply the echoes of love remembered, nothing vanishes completely. For a show that balances whimsy with melancholy, this perspective offers gentle reassurance to its audience, especially to children encountering the mystery of death for the first time. Finn's connection to reincarnation also emphasizes choice. Though his soul may be tied to grand cycles, he is never bound by destiny. He is not forced to repeat the mistakes of Shoko, nor is he required to wield the power of the comet. Instead, each lifetime gives him a foundation, and he decides how to build upon it. This is perhaps the most inspiring aspect of his story. Reincarnation does not trap him, but frees him. It gives him the chance to redefine himself again and again, to take what was broken and mend it. to take what was powerful and use it with humility. In this way, reincarnation in Adventure Time becomes a metaphor for personal growth. We may not remember past lives in the literal sense, but we carry echoes of who we once were in memories, in lessons, in the ways we change over time. Each day offers us the chance to be someone new, to shed old versions of ourselves and embrace fresh ones. Just as Finn is shaped by Shoko and the comet, we are shaped by our own histories, even as we move toward futures we cannot yet see. The show turns this universal truth into myth, making the mystery of reincarnation a reflection of the human experience itself. And as with all the great mysteries in Adventure Time, the show never forces us to accept one conclusion. It does not say with certainty that reincarnation is real, nor does it deny the possibility. Instead, it lets the idea linger, like a dream half-remembered upon waking. This openness invites us to wonder, to dream, to carry the question with us long after the episode ends. In this way, reincarnation in Adventure Time becomes less about answers and more about the comfort of possibility. The possibility that life is larger, longer, and more wondrous than we can ever fully know. Not every soul in Adventure Time finds its way neatly into the dead world, or among the 50 realms, or even into the cycle of reincarnation. Some linger, some drift. They wander through the lands of Ooo, half present and half forgotten, tethered to unfinished business or memories that cling too tightly to let them go. These spirits that wander are quieter than the grand lords of death and subtler than the cosmic comets. Yet their presence adds another delicate thread to the tapestry of the afterlife in Adventure Time, one that feels haunting, but also strangely tender. Perhaps the most well-known example of such a wandering soul is Shoko, the girl whose story overlaps with Finn's in ways both mysterious and poignant. Long before Finn's adventures, Shoko lived a life of hardship. She was disfigured by chemicals from a toxic river, cast aside by her family, and forced into a life of thievery. In her final moments, weakened and wounded, she crawled into the Candy Kingdom and lay her head near the first tree that Princess Bubblegum ever planted. There, in the stillness, her body gave out, yet her spirit did not pass on. Instead, she lingered, not maliciously, not vengeful, but almost gently. She wandered the halls of the Candy Kingdom as a ghost, unseen by most, until Finn finally encountered her centuries later. Shoko's presence is a quiet echo of the truth that some souls do not move on because something in them still yearns. For her, it was the sense of incompletion, the weight of a life cut short before she could ever find peace. And yet her wandering was not only sorrowful. There is a strange comfort in the way she connects with Finn. Though she is a ghost of the past, she becomes a guide, gently nudging him toward a destiny that redeems the mistakes of her own life. It is as though the universe allowed her spirit to remain just long enough to pass along the lessons she could not learn in time. Spirits like Shoko remind us that the afterlife in Adventure Time is not rigid. It is not a system where every soul immediately finds its proper place. Instead, it is porous, flexible, capable of holding both order and mystery. The dead world and its many realms exist, yes, but so too do these liminal spaces where spirits wander unseen. This idea gives the world of Ooo a depth that feels both magical and melancholy. For just as we find comfort in the thought of reincarnation, we also find a quiet empathy in the thought of souls that linger, held back not by punishment, but by longing. There are other examples, too. Marceline herself, though not a ghost, often seems to straddle the line between the living and the departed. Her half-demon, half-vampire nature ties her to the mortal world, but her centuries of existence, her memories of the Mushroom War, and her closeness to death make her feel like a figure forever wandering between. When Marceline sings songs of loneliness and memory, they resonate with the same gentle sorrow that lingers around spirits like Shoko. She is not technically among the dead, but her story is suffused with their echoes, as though she too carries a part of that wandering spirit within her. Even minor moments in the series hint at wandering soul. Ghosts appear in small glimpses, fleeting figures in background, strange presences that only certain characters notice. These subtle hints suggest that the world of Ooo is never entirely emptied of those who came before. The land itself seems to hold onto memories, allowing spirits to emerge when the veil is thin. Sometimes they are playful, sometimes mournful, but always they remind us of the layers beneath the living world. Layers where unfinished stories rest quietly, waiting for resolution. This wandering is not depicted as frightening in the usual. Adventure Time rarely treats ghosts as threats. Instead, they are treated as mysteries, invitations to pause and listen. A wandering soul is not there to harm, but to whisper, to remind, to nudge the living toward understanding. And in this way, the spirits that wander enrich the emotional fabric of the show. They are not loud declarations of life after death, but gentle reminders that every life leaves ripples, and sometimes those ripples linger longer than we expect. When we think more deeply about these wandering spirits, it becomes clear that they embody themes of memory and attachment. In a world as fragile and layered as Ooo, where the remnants of the old human civilization still peek through the forests and deserts, it feels natural that souls would also cling to what they once knew. Just as ruined skyscrapers lean like shadows from a forgotten age, so too do spirits lean out from the past, unable or unwilling to step fully into what lies beyond. Shoko's ghost, in particular, seems deeply tied to place. The Candy Kingdom became her final resting spot, not by chance, but because her last moments were spent in its shadow. The kingdom, with its shimmering colors and sweet inhabitants, stood in sharp contrast to the pain of her life, and so perhaps it was there that her soul felt compelled to remain. In Adventure Time, place often carries as much meaning as people, and so spirits linger where the threads of memory are strongest. Forests, rivers, castles, even objects, all can become anchors for a wandering soul. This relationship between ghosts and memory is also seen in how characters respond to them. Finn does not treat Shoko with fear, but with curiosity and compassion. He listens to her, tries to understand her, and in doing so helps bring a measure of peace to her story. The act of acknowledging her seems to give her wandering some purpose, as though the simple act of being remembered allows her spirit to rest more easily. This tells us something profound about the way Adventure Time views the afterlife. Remembrance is not only an act of love for the living, but a form of healing for the dead. Wandering spirits also appear in lighter, subtler ways, sometimes almost humorous. There are little background gags where ghosts drift through a scene without comment, or when characters casually acknowledge that a place is haunted. In these moments, ghosts are treated less like terrifying intruders and more like gentle reminders that the world of Ooo is layered, full of histories brushing up against the present. The casualness of it makes the supernatural feel natural, as though to live in Ooo is to accept that the boundary between life and death is thin and permeable. One of the more curious elements is how some spirits appear bound not by sorrow, but by affection. There are suggestions that certain characters linger out of love for a place, a person, or even a simple moment in time. These spirits are not trapped so much as they are choosing to stay close to what they cherished most. It is a gentle take on haunting, one that paints the afterlife not as a realm of fear, but as a continuation of connection. For a show that often celebrates friendship and love, this interpretation feels deeply fitting. In a broader sense, wandering spirits highlight the complexity of Adventure Time's spiritual landscape. We have already explored the dead world with its rules and its rulers, and the cycle of reincarnation, with its mysterious flow of soul. But these lingering presences show us that the system is not complete, not absolute. Death in Ooo is not a closed door. It is a spectrum, a series of possibilities, some structured, others uncharted. The wandering soul exists in this in-between, a liminal figure who challenges the idea of finality. And so when we see these figures, we are invited to imagine what it feels like to be caught between, not gone, not alive, but gently drifting. The mood is not tragic, but contemplative, encouraging us to reflect on our own attachments. If we were to linger, what places would hold us? What unfinished stories might keep us tethered to the world we know? Adventure Time poses these questions not with fear, but with softness, reminding us that even in uncertainty, there is beauty. This portrayal resonates with folklore traditions around the world, where ghosts often appear not as monsters, but as echoes of the human experience. In many cultures, spirits linger until they are remembered, honored, or released. Adventure Time quietly draws upon this timeless idea, presenting wandering souls not as threats to be exorcised, but as companions to be listened to. In this way, the show honors the deep human need to believe that those we love might never truly be gone, that a part of them lingers in the world around us. As we drift further into this theme, it becomes clear that the spirits that wander in Adventure Time are more than just figures of the past. They are symbols of longing. Each one represents something unresolved, a fragment of life that remains gently tethered to the world of the living. For Shoko, it was the ache of a life lived in hardship, her soul unable to let go until she found a sense of connection through Finn. For other wandering presences, it may be as simple as a memory too cherished to release. This idea of lingering souls transforms the way we view Ooo itself. The land becomes more than just a stage for the living. It is layered with invisible presence, a place where the air is thick with echoes of those who came before. When Finn and Jake roam through the ancient ruins or forgotten battlefield, they are not just exploring abandoned spaces. They're walking through the remnants of stories, some told, some untold, and some still whispering through the unseen. It paints Ooo as a living memory, where the physical and the spiritual overlap in ways both subtle and profound. And yet, what makes these spirits particularly fascinating is the gentleness of their portrayal. Unlike many stories where ghosts are depicted as frightening or vengeful, Adventure Time softens their presence. The wandering dead are never there to punish or terrify. Instead, they are curious, wistful, even kind. They exist not to remind us of fear, but of tenderness, the tenderness of things left undone, of feelings too strong to fade. This approach transforms the idea of ghosts from something menacing into something deeply human, even relatable. One moment that captures this tone is when Finn meets Shoko's ghost. He does not panic, nor does he prepare to fight. Instead, he listens. His openness becomes the key to helping her spirit find peace. In that scene, there is a sense that the simple act of being acknowledged is enough for a wandering soul. Recognition, remembrance, and compassion. These are the tools that Adventure Time offers us in understanding spirits. It suggests that what keeps a soul tethered is not hatred, but the longing to be seen and understood. Other moments in the show hint at a broader community of such spirits, though never explored in depth. Haunted houses, abandoned castles, and the strange lands beyond Ooo all occasionally suggest the presence of the unseen. In these brief glimpses, we sense that wandering spirits are not rare exceptions, but rather quiet companions of the world. They are part of the unseen population of Ooo, existing just outside the view of most characters, yet always near, always listening. What is especially moving is how these spirits create bridges between eras. Adventure Time spans countless ages, from the time before the Mushroom War to the distant futures glimpsed in alternate timelines. Ghosts serve as a way of connecting those timelines, binding together stories that would otherwise remain separate. Through Shoko, Finn touches a forgotten chapter of human history. Through haunted places, the characters feel the weight of the Mushroom War, even if they do not fully understand it. In this way, spirits that wander become living threads of continuity, binding together past, present, and future. This concept also invites reflection on the nature of peace. For a spirit to stop wandering, there must be resolution. Sometimes that resolution comes from within, when a soul finally accepts its own story. Other times it comes from the living, when someone acknowledges the forgotten or honors the unspoken. Adventure Time does not spell out how this resolution works, but it shows us, gently, that recognition and kindness can bring release. This resonates deeply with the show's broader themes, that healing often comes through connection, and that even the smallest acts of compassion can ripple across lives and perhaps even across lifetime. In a sense, wandering spirits also mirror the emotional struggles of the living. Just as a ghost might cling to an old memory, so too do characters like Marceline cling to their own past, haunted not by literal spirits, but by regrets and longing. In this way, the show blurs the line between ghost and memory, between supernatural and emotional. To wander as a spirit is not so different from being alive and unable to let go of what once was, and so the metaphor becomes clear. Ghosts are the embodiment of holding on too tightly, of needing help to find peace. The beauty of this portrayal is that it makes the supernatural feel deeply personal. Rather than alien beings, the wandering souls of Ooo reflect our own experiences with grief, memory, and love. They remind us of the times we have struggled to let go, or the ways in which we hold on to the people we have lost. And in presenting this with the gentleness, Adventure Time offers comfort. Even if the letting go is difficult, even if the lingering feels endless, there is always the possibility of peace, always the chance of being remembered and released. If we linger for a moment longer on the thought of wandering spirits, we might notice how they add a layer of softness to the idea of mortality in Adventure Time. Death is not a sudden, absolute severing, but rather something more fluid, more gentle. A spirit may drift for centuries, carried by memory or longing, before finally finding its way into the deeper realms beyond. This vision of the afterlife is not frightening. Instead, it is patient, compassionate, and deeply humane. The notion that a ghost may simply wait until the time is right to move on feels both comforting and poetic. Perhaps the universe itself is kind enough to allow souls to linger if they are not yet ready, offering them time to reconcile with their stories. This patience echoes the show's wider message, that growth, healing, and closure cannot be rushed. Just as Finn learns his lessons over years of trial and error, so too do spirits require their own gentle rhythm to find peace. Another striking aspect of these spirits is their silence. Unlike the bustling dead worlds where rules and hierarchy define existence, wandering souls are quiet, subtle presence. They do not demand attention, but instead exist at the edges of perception. It takes attentiveness, compassion, or a special sensitivity for someone to notice them. Finn's openness, his childlike willingness to see beyond what others dismiss, makes him especially capable of encountering them. This mirrors the experience of the viewer, who must also pay attention to the small details in order to notice the ghosts woven into the fabric of Ooo. And this quietness may be the key to their power. In a world filled with cosmic comets, warring kingdoms, and loud declarations of destiny, the spirits that wander whisper instead of shout. Their stories are small, but their presence carries immense weight. They remind us that history is not only made by rulers and heroes, but also by forgotten souls who linger in the margin. By including these spirits, Adventure Time expands its narrative beyond the obvious, telling us that every life, no matter how overlooked, matters enough to leave echoes behind. Shoko's story, once more, captures this beautifully. She was not a queen or a warrior of legend. She was a girl cast aside, surviving in the shadows. And yet, her spirit mattered. Her presence bridged centuries, guiding Finn, leaving behind the faintest touch of redemption. Through her, the show tells us that even those who believe themselves forgotten are never truly erased. Their stories continue to ripple long after they are gone. The wandering spirits also raise questions about choice. Are they bound by circumstance, or do they in some way choose to remain? Adventure Time does not answer this outright, but the ambiguity makes the idea even more enchanting. If spirits choose to linger, it suggests a profound loyalty to people, to places, to memories they cannot leave behind. If they are bound against their will, then their presence speaks to the compassion of the living who can help them find release. Either way, the wandering becomes a dialogue between the living and the dead, a reminder that both worlds are intertwined. In this way, spirits become teachers. They remind the living not to ignore the past, not to overlook the forgotten, and not to dismiss the quiet voices that linger at the edges of memory. When Finn honors Shoko, when Marceline remembers her mother, when any character listens to the echoes of those who came before, they are acknowledging that the boundary between past and present is thin, and that peace often comes only through remembrance. Perhaps that is why these wandering souls are portrayed so gently. They are not intruders, but guides. They are the soft hand on the shoulder, the fleeting image in the corner of the eye, the half-heard whisper that makes you pause and reflect. In the stillness of night, they remind us of continuity, of connection, of the truth that love and memory extend far beyond the limits of a single life. And so the spirits that wander become an essential part of Adventure Time's afterlife lore. They exist between the great structures of reincarnation and the dead worlds, filling in the spaces that rules cannot define. They are reminders that the universe is not only vast and structured, but also tender and personal. For while some souls soar across lifetimes and others descend into grand domains of death, there will always be those who linger just a little longer, waiting to be seen, waiting to be remembered, waiting to find peace. If the afterlife is a mirror, then what does it show us about the Land of Ooo itself? Adventure Time doesn't treat death as a detached concept. Instead, every realm, every spirit, every cosmic judge seems to tell us something important about the world the characters live in. To explore the afterlife is to peek into the hidden structure of Oo's reality, the rules that hold it together, the secrets buried in its history, and the fragile balance between chaos and order. From the very beginning, Adventure Time makes it clear that Ooo is not just a colorful fantasy land. It's a post-apocalyptic world layered with magic, science, and ancient destruction. The Mushroom War left scars not only on the Earth, but also in the metaphysical dimensions that brush against it. When Finn and Jake wander into the spirit realms, we're reminded that the fallout of Oo's past wasn't limited to crumbling ruins or radioactive wasteland. It shaped the afterlife, too. The spirits that wander, the judges that rule, even the dead worlds themselves, all carry the fingerprints of Oo's broken history. Take the concept of the multiple dead world. On the surface, they're just a bizarre quirk of cosmology. But they hint at something larger. Ooo is a patchwork reality stitched together from countless magical systems, divine interventions, and cosmic experiments. It's no accident that death itself is fractured into 50 layers. This fragmentation reflects the same kind of instability that created candy kingdoms and fire kingdoms, that birthed vampires and mutants, that left gods walking side by side with mortals. Ooo is not unified. It's stitched together from chaos, and the afterlife mirrors that fractured design. But it isn't just about structure. The afterlife in Adventure Time also tells us how deeply morality and consequence are embedded in the world. Unlike many fantasies, Ooo doesn't let death erase responsibility. Characters like the Lich are eternal reminders that evil carries weight beyond the grave. Even in the afterlife, destruction echoes. On the flip side, figures like Tree Trunk, Peppermint Butler, or even minor spirits show that acts of kindness and bonds of love don't disappear when physical life ends. The Land of Ooo runs on consequence, and the dead worlds enforce it. Then there's the question of identity. Finn, Jake, and even Simon encounter spirits who aren't just echoes, but full continuations of their living selves. This suggests that Ooo values persistence of the soul as much as persistence of the land itself. Ooo is always in flux. Kingdoms fall, empires rise, landscapes shift, but the essence of beings continue. In a way, the afterlife tells us that identity is Oo's most indestructible resource. The afterlife also sheds light on Oo's hidden hierarchy. The cosmic owl, Prismo, death, and the King of Mars all weave into the tapestry of life and death. These aren't just random characters. They're pieces of a system that reveals Oo's structure is closer to a cosmic bureaucracy than a simple fantasy. There are rules, judges, clerks, and loopholes. When Jake bargains with death, when Finn dreams with the cosmic owl, when Prismo bends time for mortals, these aren't one-off events. They're glimpses into how Ooo is fundamentally managed from above. And the existence of those managers tells us something critical. Ooo isn't abandoned, even after the apocalypse, even after the Mushroom War shattered the old world. Ooo is still being maintained, though imperfectly, by cosmic forces who keep its story moving. This sense of maintenance becomes especially important when you consider how much of Ooo is built on decay. Ruins litter the land, monsters wander from forgotten experiments, and ancient technology bubbles up in unexpected places. Yet despite this decay, life keeps finding ways to continue, whether through candy people, fire people, or immortal vampires. The afterlife shows us why. Because death is not an end in Ooo, it's a continuation. It's part of the recycling process that keeps the land alive. Spirits move on, worlds overlap, and energy is never wasted. If we look closer at how Oo's afterlife operates, one theme becomes impossible to ignore: choice. Unlike some mythologies where the afterlife is rigid and predetermined, the dead worlds show flexibility. Mortals can bargain, gods can intervene, and even the rules themselves can be bent if someone has enough power or determination. Jake's journey into the dead worlds demonstrates this most clearly. He doesn't just passively accept death. He negotiates, wanders, and even challenges the very beings who enforce its laws. That kind of flexibility reveals something fundamental about Ooo. It's a world that thrives on improvisation. From Finn's wild adventures to Princess Bubblegum's mad science to Ice King's chaotic magic, Ooo is never about static order. It's about bending, reshaping, and reinterpreting rules. The fact that the afterlife works the same way proves that this theme isn't just surface level. It's baked into the metaphysical foundation of the world. But the afterlife doesn't only echo Oo's themes of chaos and choice. It also exposes its vulnerabilities. The fractured system of 50 dead worlds suggests that the boundary between life and death isn't stable. It can be broken, exploited, or rewritten. When the Lich manipulates this structure, we see how fragile the balance truly is. If death itself can be conquered or hijacked, then nothing in Ooo is truly secure. This fragility mirrors the instability we see everywhere else in the land. Kingdoms collapse, alliances shift. Even magic is unreliable. The afterlife is not a realm of perfect stability. It's another reflection of Oo's fragile design. At the same time, the afterlife sheds light on how deeply interconnected everything in Ooo is. Spirits don't exist in isolation. They influence the living. They shape dreams, and sometimes they even return. The cosmic owl's dream messages prove that death doesn't cut communication. Instead, the veil between the living and the dead is thin, sometimes dangerously. This interconnectedness suggests that Ooo isn't a world with neat boundaries. It's porous, constantly bleeding into other dimensions, realities, and states of existence. Consider the way Ooo blends science fiction and fantasy. The ruins of the Mushroom War are filled with machines, bombs, and computers, yet the land is equally dominated by kingdoms of magic and creatures born of pure imagination. The afterlife continues this fusion. Its bureaucratic structure feels almost scientific in its organization. Yet its surreal landscapes and cosmic figures are steeped in mythology. This blend is what makes Adventure Time's cosmology so unique. It refuses to choose between science and magic. Instead, it insists that both coexist, even in the deepest mysteries of death. Another revelation from the afterlife is how much Ooo values story. Each dead world is like a chapter in a cosmic book, and each spirit carries a narrative thread that continues after physical life ends. Death in Ooo doesn't erase a character's story, it transforms it. This emphasis on narrative continuity reflects Adventure Time's own storytelling style. Characters grow, change, and carry their past with them, no matter where they go, even across the boundary of life and death. This raises a profound point. The afterlife in Ooo is less about final judgment and more about continuation. While there are consequences and hierarchies, what matters most is that the story keeps moving. For Finn, that means confronting cosmic beings and facing choices that shape more than just his own destiny. For Jake, it means exploring what it really means to let go. And for the viewers, it means realizing that the afterlife isn't a curtain closing on a play. It's the next act in a story that never truly ends. We also see how the afterlife highlights the tension between free will and destiny in Ooo. On one hand, the cosmic owl suggests a universe where fates are written into dreams, where death and destiny intertwine. On the other, Finn and Jake constantly fight against predetermined outcomes, proving that choice can still alter the course of events. This tension plays out across the afterlife itself. Are souls bound to their assigned dead world? Or can they resist, escape, and redefine their paths? The show never fully answers, but the very ambiguity tells us something important. Oo's reality is not black and white. It's layered with uncertainty, just like life itself. One of the most striking aspects of the afterlife in Ooo is the way it mirrors the land's moral complexity. In many mythologies, the afterlife is divided neatly into places of reward and punishment. But in Adventure Time, the dead worlds aren't quite so simple. They're layered, varied, and sometimes even arbitrary. This complexity reflects the way morality is treated in Ooo itself. Characters are rarely purely good or purely evil. Instead, they live in shades of gray, with mistakes, regrets, and moments of redemption woven together. Death's domain, for example, isn't about casting judgment. It doesn't divide souls based on whether they were righteous or wicked. Instead, it functions more like a strange cosmic bureaucracy, sorting beings into different worlds without much explanation. This lack of moral clarity tells us something subtle. Oo's afterlife isn't concerned with punishment or reward. It's concerned with balance. The cycle must continue, even if the logic behind it is obscure. We see this play out in Finn's encounters with his past lives. Each reincarnation isn't a direct response to how he behaved before. Instead, they're threads in a larger tapestry, as if the universe itself is telling the story through him. From Shoko, the scarred thief, to a comet being of pure cosmic energy, Finn's reincarnations don't suggest punishment or reward. They suggest that existence itself is an ongoing experiment, with each life adding new dimensions to the tale. In this way, the afterlife reveals that Ooo values continuity over judgment. There's also a certain playfulness in the way the afterlife is depicted. Death himself, at least in his earlier form, is not some terrifying tyrant, but a sarcastic, almost aloof figure who treats mortality with a kind of weary detachment. Later, when new forms of death appear, their personalities shift, but that same quirkiness remains. This playful tone softens the heaviness of the subject matter. It shows us that in Ooo, even death cannot escape humor, eccentricity, and oddity. And perhaps that's part of the message. Life and death are inseparable from the strangeness of existence. The afterlife also draws our attention to the fragility of memory. When a soul moves on, who remembers them and how? In Ooo, remembrance carries real weight. Think of how Marceline clings to her memories of Simon, or how Finn reflects on Shoko's lost spirit. These moments remind us that the dead are not entirely gone as long as they are remembered by the living, and in some cases those memories seem to exert actual influence, guiding the living forward. It's as though memory itself is a bridge between worlds. The cosmic owl deepens this theme by reminding us that dreams are also a form of remembering. In his realm, dreams and destinies intertwine, hinting that the thoughts of the living are connected to the paths of the dead. A single dream can alter fate, ripple across lifetimes, or even touch the very fabric of the dead world. This suggests that memory and imagination are not only human comforts, but cosmic forces in Ooo, capable of shaping existence itself. If we think about this in broader terms, the afterlife in Adventure Time becomes more than just a set of strange realms. It becomes a mirror of how Ooo itself operates through uncertainty, connection, and constant change. Every kingdom, every creature, every soul exists in a network of fragile relationships. Death doesn't break those connections, it simply reshapes them. And what of the greater cosmic beings who watch over this cycle? The fact that entities like Prismo and the cosmic owl interact so directly with both life and death suggests that Oo's universe isn't indifferent. It may be mysterious and even confusing, but it is not empty. Forces are at play, nudging, guiding, and sometimes manipulating. The afterlife reveals this hidden hand at work. When Finn dreams of the cosmic owl, or when Jake bargains with death, we glimpse the strings that connect the puppet show. We realize that Ooo is alive with unseen pattern, always moving in ways that mortals can barely comprehend. The more we reflect on it, the clearer it becomes that the afterlife is not separate from Ooo, but an extension of it. Just as kingdoms rise and fall, so too do the dead worlds shift and change. Just as relationships in life are messy, so too are the relationships between spirits, gods, and cosmic forces. The afterlife is not a static realm. It is alive with the same unpredictability, the same beauty, and the same strangeness as the living world. This continuity between life and death also means that Adventure Time doesn't treat the afterlife as a final destination. Instead, it treats it as part of a greater cycle. Death is not an ending. It's a doorway, a shift in perspective, another chapter in the same long book. And by presenting it this way, the show invites us to see our own mortality not with fear, but with curiosity and even comfort. As we reach the end of this reflection, it becomes clear that the afterlife in Adventure Time is not simply a curiosity of world building, but a profound lens through which we can view all of Ooo. It tells us that this is a universe where nothing is absolute. Life and death are not rigidly defined states, but flowing rivers, winding and merging with one another in ways both playful and solemn. The fractured dead worlds remind us that reality is never whole, that existence is made up of pieces, stitched together in imperfect harmony. Death's ever-changing faces remind us that no force, not even one as vast as mortality, is unchanging. And reincarnation, with its winding chain of past and future lives, reminds us that stories do not end when a body does. They continue in new shapes across centuries, echoing what? For Finn, Jake, and all those who wander through Ooo, the afterlife is not an abstract concept. It is a living truth. It is a reminder that the choices they make matter, not because of a heaven or hell that waits at the end, but because their actions ripple across the cycles of existence. A single act of kindness, a moment of bravery, or even a mistake born of fear. These are threads that will reappear in different patterns, echoing through the dead worlds and beyond. And for us, the viewers, this becomes a strangely comforting thought. Adventure Time never pretends that death is easy, nor does it deny the sadness that comes with loss. but it wraps that sadness in layers of wonder, suggesting that endings are simply transformations. When a character disappears, their presence lingers in memories, in dreams, and sometimes in entirely new forms. The afterlife becomes not a place to dread, but a place to ponder. There's also something deeply personal about the way Adventure Time treats these themes. So often, the afterlife is shown not through grand cosmic sermons, but through intimate, emotional journeys. Finn confronting his past lives, Jake drifting peacefully into the shimmering horizon, Marceline mourning her father's domain and her complicated bond with it. Each of these moments reminds us that the afterlife is not only vast and strange, but also deeply human. It speaks not only to gods and cosmic beings, but to the quiet questions we all carry. What happens when we're gone? Will we be remembered? Do we truly end, or do we continue? By giving us answers that are at once mysterious and reassuring, Adventure Time creates space for both wonder and rest. The dead worlds are unsettling, yet also strangely inviting. The faces of death are strange, yet never wholly cruel, and the possibility of reincarnation, whispers of stories yet to be told. These ideas together form a picture of existence that is both fragile and endless, uncertain yet beautiful. Perhaps that is the greatest revelation of all, that the afterlife in Ooo is not meant to frighten us into obedience, nor to comfort us with promises of paradise. It is meant to remind us that existence, in all its forms, is a story, one that keeps unfolding, long after any single page is turned. Death is not the closing of the book, but the turning of the chapter. So, as we let our minds drift deeper into this tale, let us rest in that thought. Life and death, memory and forgetting, sorrow and joy, each are threads in a vast and colorful tapestry. And though we may not see the entire design, we can take comfort in knowing that it stretches far beyond us, connecting worlds, times, and souls in ways we can only begin to imagine. And with that thought, let the story settle softly around you. Feel the quiet assurance that endings are never truly endings, and that even in the stillness of sleep, the tale continues. Good night.